Okay, so I think we're going to start things off. So hello everyone, thank you for joining EarthEcho's STEMExplore Virtual Career Connection featuring Dr. Tiara Moore, environmental forensics scientist at the Nature Conservancy. Wow, I cannot talk right now. My name is Akila Bandora and I'm a poet, an octopus lover, a student, and a member of EarthEcho's International Youth Leadership Council. So, EarthEcho International is a nonprofit founded on the belief that young people have the power to change the planet. Our free programs and resources have reached more than 2 million people in 146 countries. So this live event is part of STEMExplore, EarthEcho's program that brings inspiration to life by telling the stories of dynamic female professionals in STEM careers during live virtual career connections, just like this one. And we also wanted to thank our sponsor, Raytheon Technologies, for their support of women in STEM. And just a quick reminder that you can send in questions anytime for our expert, and we will answer those throughout today's event. If you're joining in Zoom, please use the Q&A function. And if you're on YouTube, just use the comment section to ask your questions. Okay, and with that, we can get started. So I'm really happy to introduce our STEMexplore mentor for today, Dr. Tiara Moore. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself. And one of my favorite icebreakers is asking people what's bringing them joy right now. So what's bringing you joy right now?
Hey, thank you so much for doing this, Akila. Thanks so much to EarthEcho for inviting me. Like she said, I'm Dr. Tiara Moore. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an environmental ecologist. And so my background is in marine ecology, but now I'm doing some work in a forest. So I'm doing a bit more environmental ecology, and I'll talk a lot more about my career, I'm sure, during this. Yeah, and so I'm currently in Seattle, Washington. I do want to acknowledge the Duwamish and Coast Salish people, indigenous people for just their stewardship of this land, allowing me to be able to be here today. And what is bringing me joy right now? This is funny that you mentioned that. I just had a really awesome outreach week called Black in Marine Science that I will talk about more. And that brought me a lot of joy, just being able to highlight Black people in marine science and just see a lot of Black people in marine science. So that is definitely what's bringing me joy right now.
Oh, that's great. That makes me very happy to hear. Um, so I guess we can get started. So our first question, well, I'm going to be asking you a series of questions, but our first question is, what do you do for a living?
So, like I mentioned, I'm a environmental ecologist, and basically, I use environmental DNA to conduct biodiversity assessments. And so, right now, I'm a postdoc, and I have this really cool position with the Nature Conservancy in partnership with the University of Washington, which allows me to be able to, do research, conduct lab work without that academic setting of having to teach or do things like that. And so, like I said, I conduct biodiversity assessments to really try to understand what's going on in the atmosphere, in the environment, using this tool called environmental DNA. So, if we go to the next slide, I believe what environmental DNA is. Okay, so we see this little GIF. Okay, so we see this fish that is it's in the water, in the atmosphere, and as you can see, it's leaving behind DNA or its genetic information. And so, what my job or what I do is I can basically go out and collect a water sample or a soil sample, what I'm using now, and I can extract that DNA and tell you that the fish was there. So it's really cool, and that's where we kind of talk about this environmental forensics, because if you think about, I guess, any crime show you've ever watched, you know that there is a bad guy who does something and they're like touch, a window or something, and then the detective will come in and they're like, oh, we have their DNA. We can now tell you who that criminal is in that aspect. And so I'm kind of doing this in an environmental way where I can go out and tell you the species that are in the ecosystem. And that's just really important for a number of things, for just understanding for us in restoration efforts to see if our community and our wildlife are being reestablished and different things like that. So yeah,
Oh my
that's
gosh,
my job in a nutshell.
that's so cool. So is there like a specific time frame that that the DNA needs to be there for you to like pinpoint exactly what species was there?
Yeah, so it's really it's just dependent on your particular question and what species you're looking for. So for me, to just do an assessment of the ecosystem, you kind of just want to see if you can catch it, if you can get
Mm,
the DNA in the atmosphere. So it just depends. So of course for water, since water is moving and there's things
mm,
going on, there is a lower residence time for the DNA. But in soil, which I particularly work in, the DNA drops and it usually just lands, there in the soil and it's there for forever. Really, there is some, degradation, but you can usually, yeah, capture it.
that's so cool. And I just have to ask, so did you always know you wanted to be an environmental ecologist? I'm a freshman in college right now, so I'm like, I don't know what I want to major in. So that'd be really helpful if you had any insight.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I started out undergrad, actually went pre-med. So I was
Mm,
in biology, pre-med. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. And then I realized I didn't really like kids, working with kids like that, to be honest. And so I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? But I had taken all of these, biology classes, and that was my thing. And I didn't want to just change it up. And so I just started looking at different aspects of biology. And so that led me to taking different field courses and things like that. And there was a field course being offered called Tropical Ecology. And the only reason I signed up for it is because they were going to Costa Rica for spring break. So I was like, ooh, this sounds fun. And so yeah, but we got there and we're on a boat and we're collecting water samples and we're doing these really cool things. So I was like, oh wow, is this something that I could do with my life? And so I
mm.
found out just about the whole world of marine science and that it could be a career. And I kind of changed my path from there and started doing more marine stuff, applied to grad school, found a program. And that's where I really became, I guess, a research scientist in grad school.
Oh, that's so cool. So, I know we're going to talk about this in our next slide, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the balance between lab work and field research. That's one of my biggest worries, I guess, because I can't picture myself in a lab all day, but then seeing pictures of you out in nature is like, oh my gosh, I want to be an ecologist, you know? So,
Yeah, so there is a balance. And again, I would say it is dependent on your question and what your part of the research is. So for me, we go out, like you see me out there. These are two different instances of me out collecting samples, right? So this is like a field day where we gear up and we know we're going to be out all day and we're collecting samples and we're doing, things out in the field. But honestly, this is more of, a period, like a standpoint. This is something I go out maybe a couple days and do it. But then the majority of my time is more spent in the lab processing the samples. So I do have the opportunity, to get out and go out and be in the field. But for me, I spend more time in the lab. And I think that's a choice. I do love being in the lab. I can't lie about that. So I think you can really figure out, where you want to be. And if you want to focus more on doing field research and field things, you can, but you also can, have that lab aspect as well. So I think you can really figure out what works for you and make your research design based on what you like doing. I think that's the best thing about being a research scientist, is having that flexibility to be like, hey,
mm.
I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do it. And you don't have to. You can just figure out something else that you want to do and make it work for you.
That's great. We actually have a question from Miss Young's class. So, Khadijah would like to know, when you're speaking of DNA, how are you collecting it? Blood samples, scales, fecal matter?
Yeah, so I should have said that. Thank you so much. So what makes it the tool is environmental DNA, or eDNA. So the DNA is in the environmental sample. And so an environmental sample could be soil, it could be sediment, it could be water, it could be air. So really a type of environmental sample that I can go out and collect. And then I take it through a series of steps in the lab where I, extract the DNA and do these things. And so that's how we get the DNA from the ecosystem. So it can be whatever environmental sample.
Very cool. Okay, so I guess our next topic is your lab work. And I know
Yeah.
you have a great video coming up, so I'm very excited.
Yes. So what does an average day look like for me? So well, pre-COVID, I'll say, my lab work in my whole life, I'm sure as everyone who's listening, has been, affected by COVID, not being able to, just go into the lab and all of that for safety reasons. But prior to that, I would, spend the majority of my time in the lab. So like I said, we go out, collect samples, and that's fun. We're out in the field. And then I bring back basically a bunch of tubes of dirt. And then, so we extract this DNA that I was telling you about, and we do this using a universal kit. But the most important thing is that we're using PCR, or polymerase chain reaction, to be able to tag the DNA with universal primers that will identify the species. So you can imagine we extract the DNA and there's a whole bunch of DNA in this tube. And so we have to figure out what it is. And so during doing this reaction in the lab, we can tag it with a primer to be able to identify the species. And so here in the lab, and what is this? The top picture. It's always messed up when you're left or right. The top photo is me. I'm working with one of my mentees in the lab, Twee. Miss Twee in the lab. We're doing a PCR reaction. And so that's just the hood to keep everything sanitary. And so that is me actually adding the primers. And so you do all of this work basically kind of in the dark. You're just doing you have the protocol and you're doing stuff, but it's almost like magic in a little tube. And so how we test this to see if it worked is we do a process called gel electrophoresis. And basically what that is that I take all of the PCR that I've set up in these little tubes and I run them on a gel. And if something shows up on the gel, then that means that this reaction worked. And if it doesn't, then it means that we need to do some other things in the lab, or that particular species that we're looking for isn't in our samples. And so, so I have a video showing just the process of the gel electrophoresis and just how it goes, showing just, the day in the lab with me. So I guess we can play the video and you'll see me working in the lab with me. I'll apologize because I edited this video myself and I had a lot of fun with it. So hopefully you will enjoy it. But basically this is what it looks like after I've been in the lab pretty much all day doing lab work. And then I do this final test to see if my whole day has been successful or not. So let's play the video. I'm Dr. Tiara Moore and welcome to the lab. You might can make it full screen, I'm not sure. But we can try it either way. So today in the lab, we're going to be doing a process called gel electrophoresis. So I'll show you a sneak peek. We've loaded our gel, it started to run, and we have to keep it covered because the stain that we use is light sensitive. But come here, look what we got. So you'll see that the gel, you'll see the DNA fragments, they are actually starting to run. So hopefully when we put this under UV light, we'll actually see those primers that we put onto our DNA fragments. Yay! All right, our gel is ready to run. So I just turn off the gel rig, unplug it from the machine. Oh my goodness, come look at this gel. So here are all the samples that we just ran, and we see that the DNA fragment moved, something happened. So hopefully we will see our amplification. So I just take this whole rig, take it over to our imaging machine, which uses this UV light to get us a photo of our DNA. So I'm gonna move it around a little because we don't want any air bubbles. Close the imager. There's a little air bubble. Make sure that it's on the screen, on my computer screen. Close the imager so you have one glove on, one off, because we don't want to have any of that nasty styrer on our imaging machine. And then run protocol. All right, guys, this is the moment of truth. I could have just been here for about 3 hours doing nothing. Wouldn't that be so sad? Here we go. Bam! Hey, so this says PCR worked, everyone. So clearly I have a lot of fun in the lab, but you have to when you're there all day. But that is, that whole process again is just showing me having a successful gel run. So the primers that I used to tag those particular samples was successful. And I just show that video and make that video just because in the environmental DNA world, there are a lot of primers to choose from and to use. And so that's something that we really have to think about when I'm thinking about designing my experiment, because I could have, and I had, done that same experiment and nothing, amplified, nothing showed up. So that's just why it's just important to do that check, because some people, do a whole experiment and don't even know if anything happened. So yeah, that's my the day in the life.
Oh my gosh, that video was amazing. Everyone is loving it. Oh my gosh. And also we have a couple questions coming in. So the first one is from Stella. They ask, what is a sediment?
Oh, that is such a good question. So it's the dirt that's in the water. The easiest way. So if you think about soil and sediment, if the thing like when you're walking into the ocean and the water that what is up underneath your feet is sediment. So it's water, field, soil.
Got it. And then we have one from YouTube. So from Miss Sky's class. So Amy asks if it's fun working in a lab.
Yes, Amy, that's what the video was about. But no, I think that is my personal goal. I think a lot of people don't have as much fun as I do in the lab. I mean, the lab setting, we get it. It's like, the white coat and everybody's like serious and focused. But I think you can create the experience that you want in the lab. And I think it would just be hard for me to be in that type of lab space that's not fun just because I'm fun. So I think I bring just a little bit more into the lab. But I think in general, like if you can enjoy doing lab work, then you can make it fun.
Exactly. You can make it fun.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, and then our next series of questions is about what's one of the coolest things you've done or seen as part of your job? Because it seems like you've seen a lot of cool things.
Yes, I have definitely got to do a lot of cool things, but I would say my favorite has been scuba diving. So here are some photos of me scuba diving. So let's see, let's talk about the scuba journey. So when I started, like actually during my master's program, actually my advisor came in and he told me like, oh, do you want to go to Bali, Indonesia? I'm like, what? Of course. Like, where's the question? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, like we found about this, this research project there. But you have to become, aquatic, a scientific scuba diver. And I was like, excuse me, what do you mean? I need to do what? And this was, I grew up, I took swimming lessons at the YMCA, but we didn't have, it wasn't around beaches or anything like that back home. So it was just something like scuba diving just wasn't something that had ever come up, And so it was like, wow, what is this? And so luckily, I was in the program with one of my really good friends, Camille, and she was a competitive swimmer. And so I told her about this and she's like, okay, we're going to get you situated, because to get the erect diving certification, you have to be able to swim. It was like swim 16 laps, because you have to go through like a test. So you swim 16 laps and, you be able to swim underwater on one breath. So it was just a lot of things. Like I was comfortable in the water, but definitely not as competent. So that was something that I had to figure out. But once I did, and I got the help, I became the scientific scuba diver, and I've been able to go to different places. So I think in the coral picture there, that is actually in the Coral Triangle in Bali. And then in the second picture down there, this is actually from a science trip that I was able to take in Moorea, French Polynesia. So I've been able to go to some really cool diving trips and see beautiful coral, beautiful marine life, beautiful marine animals. And then just the act of scuba diving in general is the most peaceful thing in the world. And it's cool because, you know, a lot of people do it recreationally, but as a scientist, like I'm just there, you know, doing research underwater, and it's just so awesome. So that has been probably the coolest thing for sure that I've been able to do.
That sounds so great. So I actually live in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm like obsessed with water bodies. So just seeing those pictures is like so calming for me. But I did want to know, how has studying or researching abroad like shaped your connection to the environment? Has it strengthened it? Has it done anything, or is it kind of all the same?
Um, I mean, I think it has allowed me to, I mean, have a different perspective of just, I think science and research in general. I know, like, you know, when we were working in Indonesia, like like tourism is really big. And so it was so interesting to see, you know, some of the community not have as much funding or resources and things, but where the corals are is super funded. You can know like they care about that area. And so like being a scientist
Mm,
coming in and trying to figure out like, oh, well, the coral, there's all these things here, but what about like this, these areas that need our help and things. So I think it really allowed me just to see globally just how other countries like live and support and think about science. And yeah, I would say it's definitely just allowed me to just have more a diverse
mm,
perspective for sure.
that's great. Do you have a favorite place you've traveled to?
Oh man, it's so hard. I mean, I think Bali is hard to beat for sure.
It sounds hard to
Um,
be.
so I would say, but then also for like I've traveled a lot for like different conferences as well. So I remember I did a conference in we did a oh man, it was in Spain.
Mm,
Yeah, and so it was just like I'm in Spain, you know, presenting research that I conducted somewhere else. So it was just yeah, I've been able to yeah go a lot of different cool places.
that's so
Sorry.
wonderful. Oh my gosh. Um, so our next question for you is, what inspired you to begin all of this?
This is funny because I kind of told this story already, and I guess you can go to the next slide so we can bring up that class. So the class that I mentioned is me there in that group of people. So this was the trip to Costa Rica that I mentioned, and so that kind of just got me all started. So I was literally you know, with these folks on a boat. The guy, the older guy, Peter Phillips on the end, he was the professor of this class, and he really like that experience really sparked my whole yeah journey into marine science. And so you can see, yeah, this was in 2011, March of 2011, and I actually came back, applied to a grad school, and got accepted and started a program August of 2011. So that's kind of this journey story. So you see me here you know, as a student, and then me, the next picture is me actually like, you know, in grad school, learning to become a scientist. And yeah, I was just really inspired. I guess I think what really intrigued me was the fact that we were in a cool place doing this water research, and I didn't know it was a real career. And then coming back to the States and seeing, like looking at different grad programs and seeing like, wow, this is a whole thing. And then understanding that I could be a part of it. So yeah, I think that's what all happened in 2011.
Big year. Oh my gosh, that's great though. And then our next question for you is, what innovation in your field are you most excited about?
eDNA. eDNA. So yeah, environmental DNA is so cool. This is me again out in the field. So you'll see I go out, and so this will be an example like that brown like I don't know, like sticky that's there in the water. So that's sediment, right? Versus dirt that's up higher. And so we have these little high tech Slurpee straws that I use. And really, I just use these Slurpee straws to be able to scoop up the soil. And so it basically keeps it sterile. So I don't have to worry about sterilizing anything in between. When I'm out sampling, I can just open a straw, scoop my sample up, and put it into a tube. And so this is really cool, this potential for environmental DNA. is that we can really understand what's going on in the ecosystem by collecting an environmental sample versus going out and doing human surveys, going out and setting up camera traps. So it really eliminates like the need for all of that extra, and we kind of can see without really seeing. So there's a lot more data that we get from, doing these environmental DNA surveys versus just depending on humans going out or cameras or things like that. So it's really cool. That's, I don't know, like technology or tools to be able to use to say, hey, like I can scoop up a sample and tell you what's here versus me having to go out and spend hours in the field. So I'm very excited about just eDNA and being here and being, I guess, kind of the I don't know, first people who are really like trying to make this like a big thing, because the field, like using environmental DNA for management, hasn't been done that long. And so we're really trying to figure out how we can make the best use of this tool. So I'm excited about that for sure.
I have never heard of that before this, but it sounds very cool. And also those pictures are you're very happy. It's like, just like a joy to see. So I appreciate you sharing them.
Thank you.
And so our next question is, how does your work contribute to a sustainable future? And I guess along that, what does sustainability mean to you? Because that's something I've been trying to think through, and I think you'd have a really good perspective on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think immediately about climate change. I think we think about sustainability, recycling, reduce, reuse. We think about all of that is how do we protect, how do we conserve, preserve, and restore all the things that we've done. Really, a lot of my, like as an ecologist, a lot of my research is focusing on human impacts to the environment. And that's really what we're trying to do, is like, how can we figure out what we've done and move forward in a way to where we don't cause more damage. And I think that's where the sustainability comes in, because it's like, we know we have resources and we know we need to use resources, but how do we do this to where a way is we're not causing damage to an entire ecosystem as we've been doing. And so my work, I think, directly is trying to help that directly in the project. So I put these two photos up of these different articles that have been written about my research. And so the first one was the Seattle Times, and it's like, restoring states' old growth forests could help fight climate change. And that was really cool that that was their take on it. And basically the whole thought process behind that is that we can use environmental DNA to understand the soil microbial community in this environment. And as we're restoring this forest, we can actually see what's going on in the ecosystem. We can see if the wildlife is coming back. We can see all these things. And then we can also understand the soil community to be able to have the best possible trees that is going to be able to store carbon. So I think there is that. So I think there is a really big, like, I don't know, what do I say? A really big way that this research can be used to help us understand what we're doing as far as the management route. So yeah, hopefully.
No, that was a great answer. Yeah, you definitely did. Thank you for that. And then our next question is, are there any hardships you've had to overcome, challenges, anything like that? And how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's being a Black woman in science is definitely rough. Definitely I've had some interesting experiences. Oh yeah, so I put this photo up here, and y'all saw this photo earlier. I put it to talk about, my biodiversity assessments and being out in the field. And honestly, this photo has been used a lot. It's almost like a stock photo, because it's like, oh wow, a Black girl out in the mud. But nobody really asked me, who took this picture and how did I even get this picture, because clearly I didn't take it. I didn't take the photo. And so I actually got this picture because I'll just be frank, a white woman, came up to me while I was out in the field and she said, "Hey, you're not supposed to be down there. I can call the cops." I'm like, oh, wow. And so for me, being in this situation as a Black woman, the cops is now a life or death situation, because the cops being called affects people differently, as we've found out and as we know through history. And so it's like, dang, here I am, like, as a scientist, you have to get permits and you have to do all these things to be able to even be allowed to do research in these places. And even though I had my permits and I was there looking harmless, I think, I was still seen as a threat. And so that was just such a scary experience. I'm like, oh my gosh, if this lady calls the cops, like this could go the wrong way. This could be a whole thing. And I'm just trying to do science. And so, I immediately like tell her like, oh, like I'm a scientist. I have a permit to be here. I'm doing research. And then of course her whole demeanor changed, like, oh my gosh, you're a scientist. Can I help? And I'm like, you just almost like you just threatened my life. Like you almost got me killed. But of course, me being me, I'm like, oh well, you can take a photo. My phone's up there. Thanks. And she did. And she like, take this photo. And like that was that. And so I think, and for me, like I just had to continue on, doing my research, collecting my samples. But that was fearful. Like I had a moment of like, dang, like this could be it, because I'm just here and I'm Black. And so that is like an extreme example because I have this picture from it. But like those things that people just expect me not to be there, not belong, generally happens. And then I'm usually, the only one that looks like me in these spaces. So that can be that could be a bit challenging for sure. So I would say that there is the times where I'm in the lab space and there's like no one else that looks like me. So it's kind of like, But then there's times where I'm just out doing science and this lady was just a random lady who's, threatening me just because I was there. So yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think this leads in really well to a woman of color space, which I stalked before this call because I was like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about that and then why you started it and what has been your favorite part and like how that shifted into a community and friendship and joy and all that good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So a woke space was created definitely based on my experiences. So like I said, again, the only Black person in the lab space generally. And I just wanted something different, like I felt like it didn't matter. I noticed a lot when I was in grad school, but I think when I graduated, became Dr. Moore, supposedly earned this place at the table, I still wasn't welcome and I still was treated differently. And that was like surprising to me, to be honest. It's like, hold up, what do you mean? Like, I belong here. I'm one of you guys. But I wasn't. And I realized that I'll never be that. And so I think it came to a point where I was deciding, is this going to be for me? Like, is this what I want to do? Do I go and do something else? And I was talking with another colleague, actually Camille, who I mentioned before, and we were having similar experiences. And I was just like, why? Why is this? And so we decided to create a space or to try and create space for women of color to literally simply exist, to be able to have a safe space where we can meet up, we can do whatever. And we can work together, we can have happy hour, we can play games, we can do all of that in this safe space. On the flip side of that, we also wanted to create workshops and trainings to be able to teach people how to treat us better. So we started doing our workshops, which are workshops that are conducted and facilitated and developed by women of color. And their whole goal is to, increase diversity, equity, and inclusion by training folks how to work with women of color. And I think it's really different than some of the diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings that we do see that are generally taught by older white males who don't have that same experience of oppression. And so I think we utilize those real experiences that happen in our life and say, hey, this is what could have been done. This is how it could have been better. And so we've been doing these workshops, and they've been really actually well received by allies as well. So if you're interested, definitely check out our website. We have a questionnaire that you can fill out, and we can do these trainings, because I think if people are serious and they want to do the work, that we need to have a place where they can go, where they can actually get help. And so that's what that's what we're doing with the woke space. So we have the space for women of color, that safe space, but then we also have these workshops that we conduct as well.
So great. I completely recommend checking it out. And I was just wondering, is it open for young people or all? Oh, like,
yes. So
very cool.
our virtual space is open to everyone. We have folks who come, like I said, come to our game nights, come to our different events. And so, yeah, they're open. So if you, like I said, if you're interested,
cool.
you can go to our website. You can send us an email to get the virtual workspace information. Yeah.
So cool. And then I guess our next slide is about Black in Marine Science Week. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so Black in Marine Science. Wow, that turned into an awesome event. If you haven't heard about Black in Marine Science, definitely look us up. But the background on that is that maybe y'all are familiar about the whole situation, that there was this incident that happened in Central Park with Christian Cooper, the Black birder who had the police called on him. And so that kind of really started a movement on social media of other Black birders, and they created something called Black Birders Week. And that was just really to highlight Black birders. And then from there, a lot of people in STEM just started creating other weeks. So there's been Black in Geoscience, Black Botanist Week, Black in Physics, Black in Chemistry. And so all these weeks were to promote that Black people exist in these fields where people think that we don't. And so I was seeing all these things happen, and I was like, oh, well, where's Black in Marine Science Week? And I tweeted that, and but from that tweet became the founder of Black in Marine Science. And we created a whole week last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, just to highlight Black marine scientists, talking about different careers, talking about diving while Black and our experiences in the water, natural hair care, things that we have to worry about getting our hair wet, but taking care of it. Talking about, being, we had a whole day for youth empowerment, to really see youth in the field so they can really be what they do see. So it was just really a whole week dedicated to amplification of Black excellence in marine science. And so moving forward, we are planning on creating an organization for Black in marine science, and to just have events and things for us. And so I'm very excited about that, to just have the support of the community that we received, and just to have built a community. And I can finally say I'm not the only Black marine scientist. There's no way, because there were so many people who came and supported the event.
Oh my goodness. It's so great to hear about. And I'm really excited to see where it goes in the future.
Me too.
And then one of our last slides is, so what advice would you give to students?
Yeah, so I think I have some tips that I put on a slide, but I would say the first advice is to find the space you need to succeed. This is so important. I think I personally, like as a younger person, didn't do a good job of this. I feel like we're taught to kind of make the space work, kind of, and just like grit and bear it. But no, no, find the space that you need to succeed. And I think that's being honest with yourself and find the things that you need. When I moved, like we get so excited to just like get a job or whatever. And then, I moved, and I was like, wow, this isn't the space for me to succeed. So I need to figure out what it is that I do need for me to succeed, and ask for that help. You have to. I think for me as a Black woman, asking for it is almost like a stigma, like, oh, we don't ask for help, we strong. No, ask for help, because there is a lot of people who have a lot of resources that actually can help. I think, like, you don't want to go out and seeing that you're helpless, but if there's something that you're struggling with that you need, there's someone else who can do it. I promise you. Like, you don't have to figure everything else out. You don't have to do all of this. Just ask the people in your network and utilize your resources for sure. Network everywhere you go. I don't even mean to sometimes, but so I guess I just like any conversation that you have can be an opportunity. Like literally, you could be talking to someone at the grocery store. It could somehow turn into an opportunity. And I would say all of the positions that I have received, it has been more like networking. I met someone in person. They told me about something that wasn't even open or wasn't posted or was about to post or different things. So just talking to people, telling them what it is that you want to do, telling them about you. You should always be marketing yourself. Just keep that up, because there is so many opportunities in rooms and we don't know about them because we don't open our mouth and we don't talk to anybody. So I would say always network. And then my last is to never, ever, 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 ever give up. I think for me, this is so important because it's so easy. Like when you're things like science can be hard. We're asking, hard questions. There are, different learning curves for like coding and statistics and and writing and all these things that you need to do to be able to be a scientist, but you can do it. And I think that's the biggest thing. I feel like a lot of things I was told it was hard. Like, when I first started learning R for coding, everyone who was teaching me, oh, it's hard. It's hard. It's like, well, why would I want to learn? Like, why would I want to do this? So I think it's like changing your perspective. It's like, I can do this and someone else did it. I can do it. And so I shouldn't give up. And so you don't give up by following the other step of asking for help. So I think when you get to the point though, when you do feel like you want to give up, that's when you really do need to ask for help and still don't give up. And that's all.
Oh my gosh, those are really good tips. And I wanted to end with a few questions that came in that we didn't have a chance to get to. So first is from Miss Young's class. So for students who are interested in this type of science, so marine science, what recommendations do you have for them? How can they begin down this pathway? Which is a really good question.
Yeah, I would say doing like research experiences, doing taking classes that offer like lab work or lab experiences is important. Just taking different like marine science classes or things like that, or even, I don't know, volunteering for maybe like after school programs that do things at the YMCA or different things. It's really hard to say a one path or one journey, just because of, there's a lot of financial limitations. Like there is no way I would have ever like been able to go to any of these, like some of these summer programs where you have to pay and like do all of that. But I don't think that counts you out as being a marine scientist. I think getting some type of research experience wherever you can is important. And just knowing like, and just having some access to the water and just understanding like what it is that you want to do is important. And then reading the current research. I mean, that might sound boring, but there is like, how I found out what research I wanted to do is that I had to read, other scientists' research and get excited or be like, no, this is boring. So I think that's how I found like my particular niche was like, oh, wow, I read a science paper that I was excited about and I wanted to do that particular research. So, yeah.
That was perfect. And then our next question is just more about you. So what is your educational background?
Oh, my educational background is, so I got my bachelor's of science at Winthrop University in biology. And so that's in South Carolina. That's where I'm originally from, if you're wondering where my accent is from. And then I got my master's of science in biology and environmental science. So it's biology with a concentration in environmental science. And I got that from Hampton University, which is in Hampton, Virginia. And it's a historically Black college or university, HBCU. And then I got my PhD in biology, Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology from UCLA, and that's in California.
So cool. And are those your degrees behind you? I don't mean to peer.
Yeah, they are.
I was just like,
they're back there chilling. 1, 2, 3.
So cool. Okay, and then Jen from YouTube asks, What does it feel like to be scuba diving?
It feels like the best thing in the world. I really wish I could explain it, but imagine like you can't talk to anybody, so that's great, and nobody can talk to you, so that's even better. Right? And you're just fully submerged under the water, but you can breathe. And so I can imagine, maybe, if you've been in a pool or something, when you go, when you go down, maybe when you dive in that first time, but just imagine if you could stay there. And it's just cool. You don't, especially after you really, master your skills. Like now I don't even think about, there's no fear, because when I first started, I was afraid. I'm like, this thing is not gonna, I'm not gonna be able to breathe. But once you actually trust your equipment, it's just the most, like, I can't, it's so hard to explain, but it's just so peaceful. It's crazy. You don't even feel wet, because you're fully submerged and you're just like in the water, and you're just swimming in it and you're breathing. So
Wait, that sounds so interesting. So you don't even feel the water?
no, I
Oh my
wouldn't say you do.
goodness.
Especially on a clear day when there's not much going on at the top. And it's, I mean, especially the further you get down, there's not tidal action. It's just chill. It's just a smooth water column with not much going on. So it's a really relaxing. I would say everyone, if you have the opportunity, if you have access, definitely check it out. Actually, yeah, and you can look in. So there are different organizations, so like PADI or AAUS. If you are at the level of, they might be for high school, maybe undergrad, but they actually have like scholarships that they offer and funding that they offer, that you can be able to, get the certification. And so that's something really important to look into, because I will be honest, scuba diving is a bit pricier, but with things like, scholarships and grants, you can make it work.
That's so great. Thank you for that. And then from Miss Young's class again, so do you have any suggestions for where to find current research? Do you have any favorite blogs or websites?
Yeah, I mean, it's so yes and no. So there's a lot of like different resources, perhaps. I mean, so Black and Marine Science, our website does have resources there. And then there's other different like marine organizations that will have resources, like I mentioned Patty. But there's also like the Black Divers Foundation, and there is just like ecology, just logs of different information. So, but if you're interested in marine science specifically, or if you want to talk more with me, feel free to email me. I think we're going to put my information up. It's hard for me to think about it on the spot. Sorry, I should have had a slide for resources, but there is a lot of different things. So feel free to hit me up on one of those.
You're totally good. And I think we're going to end with this question from Thomas. So, can we hear more about your connections to the tribes in the Pacific Northwest? Do you work on tribal lands? Do tribal members work with you?
Yeah, so I don't directly work with the tribes here in Seattle. We definitely are trying to do better, I would say, with trying to honor Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous partnerships. And I think we are definitely trying to make the effort for partnerships. And so I think for me personally, that's why I try to acknowledge the land that I am on and where we're at. And as I think about, the things that I'm doing with my research and who we're working with, um, thinking more community based, and I think that is something that, and I'm glad that they brought it up. As a scientist, we have to make decisions like where we're doing research, who we're partnering with, and things like that. And so I think that is important to consider and to acknowledge for sure. Thanks for the question.
Okay, and I think with that, we are going to wrap up. And this was literally amazing. It was so great to meet you and hear about all the cool things you're doing. And just kidding. I thought I got a notification from the chat. But yeah, again, this was so amazing and I absolutely loved it. And I think that we're going to put up your socials. So if people have any additional questions or comments or just thank yous to send you, because this was literally amazing. Yeah, We're going
Yeah,
to put that
thank
up.
y'all so much. I mean, this was great. Thank you for the work you're doing. It was so awesome to talk with you, Akila. Like I said, if you have any questions directly or specifically for me, feel free to shoot me an email or slide in my DMs, whichever you like.
Oh my goodness. So just quickly before we end, so Miss Young, whose class is tuning in, they teach fifth graders, and they're saying that all the kids are so inspired and they really appreciated having you speak to them. So yeah,
Oh,
thank you so
hey,
much.
hey, y'all. Thanks for listening.
And these are Earth Echo's social media, so feel free to connect with us here and stay in touch. And if you want to find out about more of our exciting programs, including upcoming virtual events, just go to our website or hit us up on any of our social medias. And don't forget to hit our subscribe button. And then on behalf of EarthEcho International, thank you so much for joining us for this amazing session, and keep exploring.